Hey, Beau, what's your deal about making soup?
It's actually a really good question. So, in December, I was on the island of Ibiza working on a primary school. And when I arrived, it was actually the best place in Europe to be for COVID. But when I left by mid January, it was one of the worst places in Europe per capita of people. It was even worse than London or Bristol, which is where I am now. And in fact, all the beds on the island were occupied. And nearly every person that I saw after January 1st became infected. But I was lucky. I didn't. Even my wonderful hosts, who are dear friends, began feeling really unwell. And a really good friend who lives on her own in a mountain, on the same mountain that I was staying, arrived at the doorstep at 3 a.m. And she was unable to breathe. And it's then that I started making and delivering chicken soup. Why? Because we've been eating chicken soup when we've been feeling poorly for centuries. I mean, even the Egyptian physicist and philosopher Maimonides suggested chicken soup for relieving the respiratory tract symptoms in the 12th century. So chicken soup has been nourishing us, and not just our physical self, for centuries. So what's my recipe for chicken soup? Well, actually, I don't have one. I mean, I love the process of cooking, especially for others. But I almost never cook by recipe. Instead, I cook according to what's there. I just open up the cupboards and I sort of combine the ingredients, since I just love seeing what will happen. It's a wonderful place to create. But I do have basic ingredients. So my basic ingredients for chicken soup are bone broth, garlic, and ginger. And usually I add carrots, celery, and potatoes to give that sort of weight and substance. And I spice it with sage, rosemary, and of course salt and pepper. And sometimes I add curry paste or olive paste with coconut milk and mustard. And if it's just for me, I'll add Tabasco, like I do almost on all my meals. But while we intuitively crave chicken soup, as a fascinating question, is there any science behind this craving? And to answer this question, we kind of need to understand what are the causes of the symptoms of the common cold. So rhinoviruses are the viruses that cause the common cold that we all experience. And they thrive in low temperatures. And the relatively low temperature of our upper respiratory tract is quite good for their replication, especially in winter. And these viruses also survive better in low humidity, again, like we experience in winter. So when your body gets infected by these viruses, it responds with inflammation in this upper respiratory tract, to attack these viruses. And that inflammatory response triggers white blood cells, neutrophils actually, that migrate to the region. And these guys actually, through what's called a cytokine cascade, contribute to the cold symptoms, like a stuffy nose that we all experience. So what's amazing is that the ability of the white blood cells to migrate is slowed down by chicken soup. They just move less quickly. So fewer are going to get to that region. And there's also a compound in chicken soup called carnosine, which inhibits the pro-inflammatory conditions at the initial stages that exist in infection. So hot chicken soup also speeds up nasal mucus velocity, what doctors call nasal mucus velocity. What does that mean? It means that basically it acts as a decongestant. It causes the mucus in your upper respiratory system, your nose, your sinuses, to move down your throat faster, and it does it, better than hot water or cold water. So what's having this impact on us, on our physiology, and helping us deal with the symptoms of a cold? Well, first there's of course the broth itself, the bone broth. So from the bones we get minerals like calcium and phosphorus, sodium, magnesium, and potassium. And from the marrow we get vitamin A, K2, omega-3s, omega-6s, iron, zinc, as well as even more magnesium, all of which are essential for our wellness, for our healthy living. And from the connective tissue, the tendons, the cartilage, we get glucosamines and chondroitin, which are important for arthritis and joint pain. It also supports, really interesting, it supports intestinal immunity and the density of the microbes that are so essential to your gut. In fact, when it comes to the microbes in your gut, did you know that for every one of your cells, there are 10 microbes in your system? In fact, in terms of the number of cells in your body, only 10% of them are yours. The other 90% are not you. Not in terms of mass, but in terms of the number. And most of them are living inside your gut, and they keep you alive, right? So the collagen also gets turned into gelatin, which is particularly high in glycine. And that improves hydration and the elasticity and appearance of your skin and helps with wrinkles. Though I think wrinkles are wonderful, they add character to your skin. It also supports the sleep of people like me who actually struggle a lot with sleeping. So it's really important that we maximize the potency of our bone broth. And to make sure you do so, boil the bones or cook the bones in vinegar or lemon juice, because their acidity will decrease the broth's pH, which increases the amount of carbon and magnesium that is extracted, as does cooking the bones for at least 8 hours. And that will again maximize the extraction of calcium and magnesium in particular. And of course, then there's not just the broth, there's the stuff we put in the broth. And in my case, it's garlic, onions, and ginger. So garlic, for instance, there are some studies showing that people who eat more garlic tend to have fewer colds than the placebo group. And they also recover more quickly if they got a cold. For onions, the major, what's called flavonoid, is known as quercetin. And it has antioxidant and antiviral properties. And fresh ginger also helps prevent the viruses that cause the common cold from attaching themselves to the lining of our respiratory tract, especially the cilia, the little hairs inside your nose. Then there's also just simply the fact of cooking and giving to another person, especially at a time when we're feeling poorly, and cooking is the last thing that we might want to do. So remember that we've evolved to be in the kitchen, which used to just be a fire on the earth. And we evolved not only with the fire, but because of the fire. And it's where we learn to share stories and to connect and to co-create. And cooking, and more importantly, sharing food, is in our genes. When we make the effort to give, our brains respond with neurotransmitters and hormones that decrease the negative impact of stress and increase our sense of wellness. And when we receive that gift with gratitude, the gratitude itself improves our immune system and our neurological system. It increases the complexity of your brain, increases neurotrophic factors that increase brain growth. So again, cooking is one of the last things we want to do when we're feeling poorly. And so for cooking for others who are ill is a real gift. And it's not only for the eaters, but also for the cooks. So cooking chicken soup for those who are struggling physically or emotionally is simple. But its impact isn't. It really matters. So cook soup. And by the way, when it's done, you can store the broth in an airtight container in the refrigerator for about 5 days, and in the freezer for about 3 months.